All right, everyone, we're back for another episode of the Gate topic. I'm very pleased to have seen so many people resonate with this topic. It proves to me that TikTok hasn't fried everybody's prefrontal cortex, and many of you are able to watch a hour-long video that is text-based. So, cheers to you. Perhaps you are actually gifted in that manner. You can actually pay attention to something in detail. Congratulations. So now we're just going to expand further onto the GATE program. We're going to be delving into some of the CIA archives on the topic. And we will also look at some of the Starseed PSYOP aspects into this, as well as the Tavistock Institute, and I will give you my own personal anecdotes about my dealings with being a B-boy. B-boys rise up. So let's just dive into it. This is an archived poll thread. Back when it was good, now it's been completely compromised. I wouldn't even advise people to go on 4chan these days. It's just filled with negative sigils at this point that are going to mess with your brain. So I wouldn't even attempt to go on there anymore. It's been completely compromised because they knew it was an outlet for unwanted information. So, many of the children diagnosed with these conditions are, as we have seen, incredibly intelligent. Their IQs are often high, as 130, 100 is the average. Many have IQs in the genius range of 160. Recently, I have found out that the test they once used for testing if a child was a genius is exactly the same test they now use to diagnose ADD and ADHD. So it looks like the doctors actually do know that the population of geniuses is on the increase. The psychic children are living proof of the human potential. This leads me to ask the question, why are these children put on Ritalin? And is there a valid reason to pump them full of dangerous pharmaceutical chemicals? Now, if you're a child of the 90s like me, you know that Ritalin was given out like candy to children who were diagnosed with these so-called attention deficit and attention and hyperactive deficit disorders. And what that Ritalin was really made out of was meth. So meth, I think, has properties in it that cut you off from your intuition. And in some ways, I can see that meth can be of use for, wartime and other high stress situations. Putting children on such a chemical was probably not beneficial. Many of you probably dealt with this. I fortunately was spared of this medication. But I knew many of my friends who were on meth, and they kind of were inundated with this need to constantly have some sort of substance. And many of them became substance abusers throughout their life. Many of them are actually dead now. And I just believe that there were motives that people did not fully comprehend at the time as to why this was going on. So some of these people were intelligent, though they may not have had top grades. Grades are not a reflection of your intelligence. Grades are a reflection of your compliance. People with high grades were the people who did what they're told, went home like good little bookworms, and did the homework that they were told to do by the authority instead of delving into their own interests. And in fact, one of the most high performing, high trust, top of the line countries on earth, Finland, doesn't even have homework anymore because they actually care about their own folkdom in a lot of ways compared to other countries. So they've outlawed such a practice. So people who brag about their grade, even people who brag about IQ, to me, it's just really off-putting. So they are very creative and enjoy making things. Always need to know why, especially why they are being asked to do something. Had disgust and perhaps loathing for much of the required and repetitious work. Were rebellious in school, and that they refused to do homework and rejected authority of teachers, or seriously wanted to rebel, but didn't dare, usually due to parental pressure. I think rebellion, that tendency in the youth, is a very valuable trait. And even if you are rebellious in your youth and you come to the conclusion that many structures, many traditions, many aspects of society are actually valuable, the fact that you had to delve into those topics for yourself and find out for yourself that these institutions and these traditions of a culture are actually valuable, it proves to me that you had to actually figure this out for yourself rather than just being told to accept these so-called cultural norms and traditions. You actually had to do the delving into these things on your own accord. May have experienced early existential depressions and feelings of helplessness. These may have ranged from sadness to utter despair. Suicidal feelings, while still in high school or younger, are not uncommon in the indigo adult. Now, we're going to look into the indigo aspect because I believe that this is kind of a psyop within this whole conclusion. But for now, we will wait later. But just know that I am not in the indigo child camp. Even the term indigo, to me, that whole color, we know what that color really is pointing to. But yeah, I know very intelligent, bright people, gifted men and women who were going through these feelings of isolation and depression growing up. It's never like the midwits, right? Midwits don't really have existential crisis. It's more of the high IQ types, the high functioning types, which to me, I mean, it proves it's a double-edged sword. Intelligence, there are diminishing returns as you become more and more intelligent in a lot of aspects of your own mental health. Have difficulty in service-oriented jobs. Indigos resist authority and caste systems of employment. Prefer leadership positions or working alone to team positions. Now, I know this can be a little bit of a special snowflake type of syndrome that may be appearing to the surface when we talk more and more about these people, but when you're in a subservient role to somebody who is clearly less capable and intelligent to you, it is very frustrating. and I'm sure you've dealt with this in your life, it can be extremely grating having to see things not function optimally when they should be. And you can clearly see the solutions and how to implement them very easily. But because you are in this, cosmopolitan caste system that has artificially encapsulated us, you have to bend the knee and deal with it, which can cause a lot of cognitive dissonance and frustration. I have a deep empathy for others, yet intolerance for stupidity. Yeah, and this is why I actually do believe in this whole gate thing that has happened and the gifted program and intelligence as a spectrum. In order to come to these conclusions, you have to, at some level, believe in inequality, especially inequality of intelligence. So if you are all is one is all, love is light, there's going to be a bit of a problem stepping over the line here and accepting these ideas, which is why I don't like the indigo aspect. But yeah, when you understand that human beings have a caste system, then you will see the reasons behind the gate. May be extremely emotionally sensitive, including crying at the drop of a hat, no shielding, or maybe the opposites show no expression of emotion, full shielding. May have trouble with rage. Again, rage. We've discussed rage. And yeah, I mean, I'll admit rage is something I've dealt with in my life a lot. There's no pretending that that's not really a thing. It gets better with age. I think now I'm at a point where I have a good control and I know how to channel it. Which, the problem with the rage is that especially young boys, are given no real outlets in the school system to channel that rage, that aggression. There's no martial aspects anymore in these longhouses, so you can't really learn how to deal with rage in a positive aspect. It's an energy outlet. When you have these overwhelming vats of energy, rage is just one way it develops. I mean, crying is another way. Sensitivity and whatnot. These things are normal for human beings, and it's just the way we deal with it is the problem. Have trouble with the systems they consider broken or ineffective, political, educational, medical, and legal, right? We all know how corrupt and broken everything is, and a lot of you don't even participate anymore, which I commend. Some more traits: alienation or anger with politics, feeling your voice won't count, and or that the outcome really doesn't matter. I was blackpilled on politics at a very young age, probably around 14. I really got into like 9/11 and the Iraq War. And I'm going to get a bit more into that as we progress because there is a military aspect to Gate. And luckily for me, I didn't become a man who stares at goats because I was pretty clued in as to what was going on in terms of the military and why we go to war with certain countries at a very young age. So I did not go into that martial realm, even though I am a big fan of the martial aspect of these institutions. I knew that I would be cannon fodder for people who hate me. Frustration with or rejection of the traditional American dream 9 to 5 career, marriage, 2.5 children, house with a white picket fence, etc. I mean, the 9 to 5 thing is very hard for me to do. I've dealt with it. I'm going to get into that as well. But for people who may or may not have some sort of gift, it is difficult. Now, I'm not saying I am the super psychic Mr. Magician of the ages. I probably fall somewhere here, but I've come into contact with and have met people through this channel who are infinitely more psychic than I am. It's a exponential curve, and one person in particular I think is on the top 0.1% of this curve. So I'm probably not. Anger at rights being taken away, fear and or fury at the big brother is watching you. I mean, I haven't read this far into it yet, but yeah, 15 years old, I was reading 1984. I think when you are class is A, and if you don't know what A is, please go watch the first video. When you're class at A, you are very easily manipulated into becoming an activist for the wrong types of people. And they use this anger at injustice and unfairness that is inherent to your mode of being, your gifts. They use that for their own methods, their own means, their own agenda. Have a burning desire to do something to change and improve the world. Maybe stymied what to do. They have trouble identifying their path. Yep, I'm sure you guys know how that goes. Have psychic or spiritual interests appear fairly young, in or before teen years. That is definitely me. I've always been kind of in this world. I know a lot of my videos are talking about Nietzsche and barbarians as of late, and you may not see how this relates, but it actually all is connected. It's all part of an overarching topic here. Different threads being weaved together and trying to dig your way out of the rabbit holes that they've set in place for us, because when they know you're psychic, you're a gate, you're a quote unquote starseed, they're going to make you think you're an indigo child. And they're going to start feeding you into the new age. And before you know it, you're going to be doing urine rituals on stage with Skylife. Random behavior pattern or mind style. Symptoms of attention deficit disorder. May have trouble focusing on assigned tasks. May jump around in conversations. Yeah, I mean, I probably do have it. The amount of tabs I have open on any given time. The amount of books I read at any given time. It's never just one single thread I'm delving into. So I think there is benefits to it. There's pros and cons. Being able to multitask in different topics at once can broaden your horizons quicker than people who don't, or people who have singular interests as opposed to a wide variety. I've had psychic experiences such as premonitions, seeing angels or ghosts, out of body experiences, hearing voices. Okay. I've had a couple strange encounters. I've seen a couple of things that are weird, unexplainable. I've experienced sleep paralysis. You don't want to have to ever go through that. It's a very horrible feeling. But yeah, I'm not going to go into the specifics right now of these things. These will be topics for different videos, but I've had unexplainable experiences. Maybe electrical sensitive, such as watches not working, streetlights going out as you move around them, electrical equipment malfunctioning, lights blowing out. Yeah, I think this is just your EMF, your field, your vril field, your aura is more powerful, so it affects things more so than other people. May have awareness of other dimensions and parallel realities. Well, if you've seen any of my videos on CERN, you know that this is something I have talked about. And I'm going to go back to that topic shortly. Sexually are very expressive and inventive, or may reject sexuality in boredom, or with intention of achieving higher spiritual connection. May explore alternative types of sexuality. Well, I've never explored, I don't know what that means, so. But yeah, it's gonna just, no comment there. Seek meaning to their life and understanding about the world. May seek this through religion or spirituality, spiritual groups and books, self-help groups and books. Yeah, where my Tony Robbins fans at? Okay, you can do it if you try. No, but I mean, I've always dealt, so I can relate to that. Though once you delve into like mainstream religion enough, you realize, okay, well, there's some things here that don't are not congruent with my being. So something's being hidden from us. What is actually going on? And so you go delve into alternative paths. And sometimes you get down a rabbit hole that isn't beneficial, but maybe you had to do that in order to have a greater understanding of your spiritual path, of your own bio spirit. I've been accused of trying to look too deeply into things by people I've had in my personal life before, and it's like being upset at somebody for being a artist, or a musician or an engineer. Like, why should someone be shamed for their passions and interests? Why should they, be told just to, let go and just enjoy life as it is? Don't think too deeply. Why are these people whispering in your ear? Don't think about things too deeply. Maybe they want you to stop because you're coming to conclusions that they don't want you to. When they find balance, they become very strong, healthy, and happy individuals. Well, okay. F off, FBI. Yeah. 9 gag tier. Okay, now we're getting some poll comments, but we don't really need to go that far. Interesting stuff. Definitely resonates with me. Another thread. Searcher. Never seen, but the link I had in my previous video, if you delve deeper into it, there's lots of links and lots of archived sites about this topic. You just have to kind of know how to navigate GitHub, which can be kind of frustrating sometimes, but once you figure it out, This thread is for exchange of experiences pertaining to GATE, TAG, Quest, GT programs. Programs are federally funded and state-run. Formal pupils report. Paranoia. Bizarre relationship events involving soulmates. Okay, the amount of witches who have told me that I am their soulmate, I don't even know how many at this point. It's a lot. That's how they kind of get you. I think they can kind of read that you're sensitive to these things. And they know if they, pull out the whole soulmate card, they can kind of hook you. So be wary when people start pulling out soulmate, twin flame, these types of talking points early on in a relationship, because they might be involved in things that aren't good for you, and they probably know how to manipulate you. So beware. Rorschach tests, Rorschach memory cards, family members involved with the government. Okay, not well. Okay, maybe actually, not directly, but my brother was in it, but I couldn't sit long enough to take the test. He's kind of a paranoid and alcoholic. Our father is a Vietnam veteran and was high up in the IRS. Okay, so Anon is a B-boy. Okay, he could not be controlled by them. His brother was an A-boy, and because he was an A-boy, he probably had to do things that he didn't like, and now, well, he has to treat the trauma with alcohol. That's kind of like, sadly enough, because, okay, you're a B-boy, you're going to have people, what I like to call blocking you. Basically, you are going to be blocked in life. It's kind of like that Black Mirror episode where you're blurred. They're going to know what you are. They're going to know who you are. And they're going to bar you from your respective fields and things in your life that may seem like chance or far flung. When you look back, you're going to see threads that are connecting these events. And it's going to point towards a coordination and a coercion. I'm not saying, you're absolutely a TI or anything like that. I don't have, paranoid thoughts of people following me or things like that. But I think there is an unconscious aspect where people are conditioned to know who you are, to know what you are, and act on that subconscious programming. I will explain further when I get to my own personal anecdotes. I'm category 2. Okay, he's a B-boy. And definitely was effed with post-gate. Can't reveal too much about me, but please take what I'm about to post very seriously. As governor of Massachusetts, Everett had to deal with the problem of the influx of poor Irish Catholics into his state in 1852. With the support of Horace Mann and another strong advocate of the Prussian model. So if you don't know what the Prussian model is, basically the Prussian model is our modern interpretation of how to go about schooling pupils. Previous to the Prussian model, schools were drastically structured differently. So you would have had kids in much smaller classrooms with different age groups all interacting together. The subject matter would be much more fluid, and everything was less blocked in terms of their certain periods or their day, 60-minute blocks, 40-minute blocks, what have you. The Prussian model changed all that, and now our current interpretation of education is based off of that model that's gone back over 100 years. Canada and we'll get into Canadian mind control, was an extremely fervent and early adopter of the Prussian model, as well as the United States. So even now in Europe, these models are changing, but Canada and the United States is holding on to this for dear life, and because, well, it is a very effective way to program a society to the factory model, the line infantry model. How do you make a line infantryman? It's not a natural mode of being to line up and shoot another line and stay completely still and disciplined, waiting for a cannonball or a musket ball to pierce you. These people had to have been conditioned to such an extent that they would become a line infantryman. And that's the Prussian model. So today, the modern line infantrymen are the 9 to 5 workers, the wages. Ever made the decision to adopt the Prussian system of education in Massachusetts, unfortunately, for the children and the poor Irish Catholics of Massachusetts and everywhere. Hold on, I need some Earl Grey here right now. The system produced a willing, I didn't even read that far, but look. The system produced a willing, cheap labor force with minimal reading and number skills, okay? There's no critical thinking being taught to you in school, and that's for good reason, okay? They don't want you to be out there becoming artisans, starting your own business. They want you to be a corporate slave. The Everetts of the world understood that people could read and understand are dangerous because they are intellectually equipped to find out things for themselves, thus becoming a threat to already established power elites. Okay, well, you do learn to read in school, but you don't learn to actually like read and delve and study and deduce and explore. You're given extremely boring, extremely poorly written books that have agendas. Okay, Shakespeare, maybe you get one Shakespeare play. Maybe you get Romeo and Juliet, but that's about it. And the way they make you digest it is in such a boring manner that you're not even going to want to read Shakespeare after going through that. Inglis, for whom a lecture in education at Harvard is named, makes it perfectly clear that compulsory schooling on this continent was intended to be just what has been in Prussia in the 1820s, a fifth column to the burgeoning democratic movement that threatened to give the peasants and the proletarians a voice at the bargaining table. Modern industrialized compulsory schooling was made sort of a surgical incision into the prospective unity of the underclass. Divide children by subjects, by age grading. Again, age grading. There's some weird thing about age grading, man. Like, think that you should segregate by yearlings is going to really not equip you very well for dealing with the vast array of older and younger people that you come into life. So then you kind of self-segregate amongst your own generations, which we see now today. You know, the generation wars, boomers versus zoomers versus exumers versus millennials, and alpha. It's getting out of hand. I mean, boomers are a problem, but I will make a video about proto-boomers because actually the boomer sickness goes back even to the silent generation. We'll take a look at that. by constant rankings on tests and by other more subtle means, and it was unlikely that the ignorant mass of mankind separated in childhood would ever reintegrate into a dangerous whole. Okay? We don't want you meeting outside of, the designated work time to come up with any dangerous ideas. Here's a CIA document. So the military basically realized that, hey, you have all this untapped potential that we should be cultivating and subjugating to our own whims. So why don't we go around and find these psychic kids so we can use them? Because the Soviets are doing it, the Chinese are doing it, the Germans were doing it for a long time. And we gotta hurry up and get on board with this whole gifted grooming. Otherwise, we're going to be dealing with, super soldiers from Russia who are not going to, where we are not going to be able to resist. Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, Chief of the Naval. Oh, a lot of this is, poorly printed. Branch of the Atomic Energy Officers, I think. Does it say officers? I don't know. The Atomic Energy Commission today accused the American school system of neglecting its talented youth. The man who was instrumental in building the first atomic submarines when he headed the Nautilus and Seawolf projects. And it's kind of interesting that they're called the Seawolf project, because if you know anything about seawolves, this was a German doctrine. And a lot of this stuff has its origins in Germany. The Seawolf projects suggested radical changes in engineering and scientific education. He proposed that industry and labor, along with educational foundations, set up a series of 25 free secondary academic schools, so that these would educate talented youths now being miseducated by lockstep methods in the United States schools. So it's going to be the Prussian method for you, and it's going to be our high-grade, creative, psychic, cultivating education for us. Which is why, private schools are a thing, because they don't want to be, dealing with the riffraff out there. They have their own methods. Waldorf schools come to mind. You know anything about Waldorf schools? They actually have their origins with Rudolf Steiner, who was an occultist. And we're going to take a look into those schools in a different video. But again, occultism for me, Prussian line infantry doctrine for thee. Admiral Rickover spoke to more than 300 educators, industrialists, and government officials at the 7th Tom and Alva Edison Foundation Institute here. To put it bluntly, he said, our schools do not perform their primary purpose, which is to train the nation's brain power to the highest potential. Right? So they know these schools are crap. They're like, hey, we need to get the talent out of there because they're going to go nowhere in these indoctrination camps. So let's get them out. Let's use them for our own means. And anyone who's a danger, well, we're going to have means of dealing with them. Okay. I don't think I have to read the whole thing, but I think you guys understand what's going on here, right? And of course, the CIA, they want to desegregate gifted talented classrooms because they need to cultivate amongst the gifted the ethos of civilitas, that you are not a member of a folk or a bloodline or a specific culture. And I'm not just saying that this is, related to being, white or whatever, but everyone, Vietnamese kids and Asian kids and whatever, not only, their psychics of all varieties, right? So we got to get these kids to be civilitas. We have to make them Roman citizens to fight for us in our multicultural legions. We can't have them going back to any type of folk loyalty. Okay. Black principle. Black is the label. And we then expect to hear her use black English, the stereotype. We see dark-skinned teacher from Arizona. Arizona is the label, and assume he's a Native American. Native American stereotype. Okay, in the end, the Native Americans, that's another thing too. I mean, they don't want them having any type of ideas of their own folk. They use the Native Americans a lot, actually, in their ops. If you read anything about the Rangers with their long hair and how they could, use extrasensory perception. Apparently, with long hair, I think it's kind of overblown, the long hair aspect. I think they were just kind of, they're kind of just, pointing that away and just saying, oh yeah, it's her long hair, but I don't think hair length has anything to do with it, And women, they need to get the women. I mean, probably your most valuable operative is the female operative. They are the best of the best when it comes to ops and spying and intelligence. So they need to get them all on board to the Freemasonic States of America civilitas ethos. Education we victimized or victimized by labor. Okay, so a lot of this, you can see where a lot of this modern language has its origins. We see these types of phrasing, this phraseology in our modern vernacular. And it did just appear out of nowhere. It comes from intelligence agencies, and this goes back, a while. So it didn't just appear out of the blue. There's a reason for it. And I believe the true reason, again, is the Roman law, the Roman legionnaire. We need everybody to be loyal to the concept of being a citizen of the Masonic state. To each of these labels, we unwittingly attach stereotypes, generalizations, or myths. The blind child is often believed to be quite bright. Well, I think there's truth to this, okay? Blind people, I think, have a bit more of a sixth sense. I think it's developed more when you're not constantly bombarded by the visual world. You're not being blasted by sigils all day. You're kind of, in a way, protected. I mean, it's obviously a blight. It's a horrible thing to happen to somebody, but, there's pros and there's cons to everything. I don't think the pros outweigh the cons in that situation, but there certainly are. The gifted child is considered to be a snob or an egghead. The stereotypes or myths lead to real and perceived isolation. A gifted child who is viewed with suspicion of his misunderstood talent may be isolated emotionally from his peers, his parents, and his teachers. Special education labels lead to academic as well as social isolation and segregation. As special education professionals, okay, and here's another thing, right? Special education. That doesn't just mean people who are, how do we say this? Special. Okay, this means people who are gifted as well. Uh, we seek out children according to their uniqueness, their unusualness, their difference. To meet the child's special needs, we isolate him in a special academic program. Because the exceptional student is isolated academically by program, he becomes isolated socially by association with the program. Okay, he's being programmed. You're being programmed. Special education programs for gifted children are developed to help ignite their creative, academic, and social potentials. Whether the program structure is self-contained class, a resource room, or an itinerant format, whether the program structure is a self-contained class, a resource room, or an itinerant format, the children are confronted with their giftedness in that educational setting. They're faced with their own humaneness when they leave. Thus, the students as well as the teachers become isolated from their peers by the label. Okay, he's the gifted kid. He's the special kid. He's the smart kid. They are treated differently. Okay, there were people in my family who were A boys, and they were, you know, treated like they were superior. And of course, this creates a superiority complex within them. And that is how they can use you for their own means. Because you're an elite, you're special, you're better, right? There grows a social isolation which breeds elitism and misunderstanding. The students are children totally gifted in part. As educators, we have been dealing with only a part, failing to realize that perhaps our role must include helping the student to deal with constructively with his childness. Okay? We got to let you know how to deal with the fact that you're a kid still and not, a super soldier at this point. But maybe we will make you into a super soldier. Where are we at? Okay, well, you don't have to read the whole thing. If you want to read more, I'll put the links in the description below. A study that has been following gifted kids for 45 years. Here's what we learned. Okay, so they're keeping tabs. They're keeping tabs on you guys. They want to know what's going on. What are your trajectories? What can we learn from letting 7th graders take the SAT? In the 1960s, psychologist Julian Stanley realized that if you took the best-selling 7th graders from around the country and gave them standard college entry exams, those kids would score on average about as well as the typical college-bound high school senior. However, the 7th graders who scored as well or better than high schoolers, Stanley found, had off-the-charts aptitude and quantitative logic and spatial reasoning. In other words, they were gifted, okay? They found you pretty early on. Okay, you're out competing college kids in 7th grade. Okay, we need to use these kids for our own means. It's what they're thinking in their minds. Now I understand why. Because, homeland security and whatnot. But they are doing it in a not a beneficial way for the gifted person. In the 1970s, Stanley and his team launched a full-scale study identifying many American gifted kids and tracking them throughout their lives. A study called the Study of Mathematically Precocious Youth. Precocious Youth never ended and is now nearly 45 years in the making. It has followed countless kids from middle school into their careers as some of the America's top politicians, scientists, CEOs, engineers, and military leaders. Stanley passed away in the mid 2000s, but psychologist David Lubinsky helped to bring the study to Vanderbilt University in the 1990s, where he now co-directs it with Kamala B. Benhow. It's not a stretch to call this the biggest and most in-depth study on intellectual precociousness. The result of the study thus far are equal parts fascinating and generally surprising. A deeply insightful look into the minds and lives of brilliant children. Some of what we thought about gifted kids turned out to be wrong. Ever heard the saying, early to ripe, early to rot? It basically means that doing too much to foster kids' special talents and abilities at a too young an age could actually cause harm in the long run. That's not even remotely true. Okay, so this justifies them saying, hey, look, the earlier the better. We gotta get them, seventh grade. Now, what are we doing? We gotta go to third grade. Okay. Intelligence is not the same as passion. Quick, what's the smartest career you can think of? Doctor? Scientist? No, actually, it's not. While you do have to be pretty brilliant to work with medicine or science, not true. Those are far from the only career paths gifted kids choose later in life. Quantitatively gifted people vary widely in their passions. Lubinsky says many of the students in the study did end up pursuing medicine, but others went to fields like economics or engineering. Others still were more gifted areas like logical or verbal reasoning, make them excellent writers and lawyers, right? I think that's where you're using magic in these fields, right? You're using magic and you're creating something out of absolutely nothing using sigils. I think those are the smartest people, in my humble opinion. Hard work. Okay, here's where they're lying. Hard work definitely still matters. No, it doesn't. Measuring a student's aptitude, natural ability, is only one part of the equation when it comes to determining how successful they'll be. Aptitude score. Okay, so here's the thing. These kids are identified as type 1. Okay, they are the A boys. Okay, they are going to go along. The doors are going to be open to them, and they're going to fail upward. They're going to fail upward in the wise words of Jagmeet Singh, right? Except his take was completely the opposite, but whatever. And so if you're B-boy, you're blocked, you're blurred, you're out. So now maybe it's a good time to transition into my own personal anecdotes of these types of topics. Where do I begin? Okay. So my brother, he was gifted. He was labeled gifted. I was not. I was labeled the opposite of gifted. Even though I think we are very, very, very similar in our interests and our capabilities, in our verbiage and our aptitudes, and even our life, the same career. Even we ended up in the same types of career, but he's a much easier going guy. more amicable. Whereas I am a bit more stubborn-minded, more like a dwarf. I've gone over this before anyway. So, I had terrible grades. Terrible. I didn't do anything in high school. I even dropped out for a year. And somehow I, got some credit recovery programs and I ended up getting my diploma somehow. But no, I was not doing work in high school. I was rock climbing. I was doing music. I was in a band. I was getting into trouble. I was just doing a lot of bad things, quote unquote bad things, rebellious things, typical teenage stuff. So I had horrible grades. Somehow, I decided to go to college in my early 20s. I think I was just bored. I wanted to move to a city. So it's just so weird, I got rejected from most programs except for one program, journalism, because I did well on my entry essay. So they took me in. And that was a major step for me in my kind of awakening process. I was already, into Alex Jones and, kind of normie tier conspiracy stuff before that. So I kind of wanted to go in and be like, oh, I don't really necessarily want to be a journalist, but I want to learn some media skills, I want to learn how to write better, maybe I can do my own thing. I went into it thinking, I'm not going to work for a media company or anything like that. I just want to learn some skills, get some experience. And man, what a glow up infested cesspool that program was. Most of the people there were not Canadian. We had sex operatives from Russia. We had mafia kids. We had, Nigerian princes. I'm a guy from small town, Canada, and I moved to the big capital. So I guess, that's was to be expected. I mean, I didn't see it for what it was. But now, looking back, oh, that was a glow fest. And the professors were training us. Essentially, they're training us how to be glowies. I'm just going to reveal some journalistic tactics for you guys. You know what? Here's number one rule: never ever talk to a journalist, ever, never. Because the tactics that they taught us, tactic number one: become their friend. Okay, a journalist is going to pretend to be your friend. They're going to pretend to be on your side or sympathetic, or they're actually, they're going to pretend to be a double agent too. So they're going to make you think, yeah, they agree with you, but oh, they want to have a job. So they're just going to be, they're just playing ball with the system. But no, that is a tactic, they're never on your side. If they're working for a major institution, there's no way in hell they didn't get blackballed out of that when they got sniffed out as not being on the team. Okay? So that's number one rule. Never, ever talk to a journalist. Ever. So yeah, they teach us tactics. But eventually it came to the forefront that I was not one of them. And so I was blurred within the program. Another interesting aspect of the journo culture. The people who play the hardest ball, the people who are down with the cause the most, they are getting the prestigious placements within the internments. So, based off of your history of what you covered, they're going to see, oh, this person is one of us. They're an activist. They're not a journalist. We're going to give them, the prime post at the state-run media, and they're set for life because now they're in that institution and they're working as one of them. Like recognizes like. So the harder ball, the more down with the cause you are, the more you will be placed in these guaranteed positions of influence, by the way, of influence within our society. I was not giving up anything. I ended up dropping out because I just couldn't take it anymore. One stark example comes to mind. And I wanted to, this is the whole Jordan Peterson phenomenon. I wanted to cover it. The free speech on campus type of stuff. And you had to basically approach your professor and then, give a request as to what you wanted to cover. You didn't have free reign. You don't have free reign in the media either, by the way. The editors, what they like to call, will kill it. They'll kill a pitch. So I got a pitch that was killed. Free speech on campus, right? Instead, they said, well, what you should write about is, can a white man like yourself be an ally to minorities? I was like, what? What does this have anything to do with my original topic? Okay, and then I clued in pretty quick, right? I was already clued in before, but I just didn't understand like how it all really worked, like the mechanisms involved. Okay, now I understand. Okay. And then it became clear, I it was the Trump election the following year. I was the only one in my esteemed class of glowies and princes and sex operatives that made the correct analysis that Donald Trump was going to win because he swung the Rust Belt states, okay? Even my professor was like, wow, you actually understood how this happened. Yeah, because I've been paying attention. And I'm kind of from the Rust Belt. I'm like from the Canadian Rust Belt. So I know how these people think. I understand Donald Trump is appealing to them and talking to them. So I think they will vote for him. And that therefore he'll win. And then, that must be, I'm a Trump supporter, right wing, so I got, I got blurred after that. So I was a dropout. I went back home. I was very sick at the time too. Just the whole vibe of that city is just poison. It energetically just destroys you if you're there. I went home. I got better. I got stronger. I started getting more into my, barbarian stuff. And I saw that there was a position available as a newspaper editor. An editor, not even a writer, an editor. I just applied out of the blue. I was like, why not? Let's see what happens. I was looking for a job at the time, so I got the job. And my regional editor knew that I was a dropout. So, I'll give this guy a shot. And that opened my eyes up to even more of the mechanisms of control. Okay, I was at a town hall meeting with the law, and there was a rise in break-in entries in the town. They were going over the stats. And, I was like, okay, I'm going to cover this. Yeah, this is news, right? This is what news is. Okay, something's happening. It's bad. We should cover it. And you know, the checkerboard hats told me, hey, don't cover this. We don't want to upset the community. We don't want to make waves. Don't cover this. It's not a good idea to cover. It's just even though it's publicly available information in the public record on the town hall meeting, because you have to make it all public. That's not. Don't cover it. I was like, you know what? I gotta cover it. Fuck these guys. And after that, I was blurred. I was not given any access to be able to contact police in any type of capacity when it came to, accidents or, you know, general legal law news. I was blocked. I was put on block. No reply. I was just ousted. You can't, you know. Okay. So I was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, they're checkerboard hats. Okay. I, it's, it's fucking real. Great. Great. Okay. Then the next day, I go to another town hall meeting, and the counselors are talking about how their meeting with the worshipful master went last night. The worshipful master. I was like, oh my goodness, man, this is all pervading. It's all pervading. I am not in a good spot right now. I am probably, you know, putting my head above the grass a bit too far here. And then just a lot of weird things happened. Like, so I was the editor, but I wasn't, like, the editor doesn't do the layout for the paper. And the paper would have all of these absurd spelling mistakes and date mistakes and time mistakes on the headlines. Like, you don't control the headlines, so like the advertising headlines and the front page headlines, and it was very strange. And there was one guy in there, the sales guy. He was a freaking weird guy. Like he made the hair on the back of my neck prick up. I actually pulled him aside one day and said, look, you're the sales guy. You do your sales thing. I'm going to do my journalism thing. And beyond that, we're having absolutely zero contact with each other. Like, I literally told this to this guy's face. He was a really strange guy. Something dark was going on there. He wasn't even from the area. Like, he was from Quebec or something. But he didn't have a Quebec accent either. It was really weird. It was really weird. And so, yeah, just all these weird, like, mishaps and weird things that, like, I just, and then you get like a bad rap because, there's, you're the new editor and there's all this stuff going wrong. And, I was, looking back, I blame myself. Like, in the moment, I was blaming myself. Like, what is going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? But now looking back, like, oh, I made some enemies pretty quick. And yeah, I got blurred. I got blocked. I got to a point where it's like, you know what? Oh man, there was other things happening, like just like racial tension stories that I was like being pressured to cover that I didn't want to cover in like a little small town. I was like, wow, like I got to see the inside. Like it's rotten to the core, rotten to the core. And I got out, and that's when that's when I started going back to mining. If you wanted to, if you want to hear about that, you can listen to my blue collar meat grinder video. But again, that's the thing about the B boys. Like a lot of us should have probably been in some sort of white collar job, but because we aren't playing ball, we get blocked. Or you're supposed to be like a hired, more skilled blue collar type of guy. Because, the blue collar thing, I respect the industrialness of it, the industrialness aspect of it. I don't respect, the culture that's been accumulated around it. So you can hear my thoughts on that in a different video, but yeah. Basically, I had the opportunity to be a comfy office worker. Man, you don't have to do much, man. You can pop out a couple stories and you get your salary, and that's it. Nowadays, man, I could be sitting here getting chat GTP, right? My racial tension stories in my small town and be making easy money and not really caring about much. But this is what happens when you have certain wrong think. You don't get rewarded. So the mechanisms of control, it's not like, that's what I want you guys to take away from this, is that, like, if you are a b-boy, like, there's nothing actually wrong with you. You are actually a very competent, smart, talented individual. You're just born in a society where your inner biospirit does not align with the pervading ideology, and therefore you get ousted. And the people who are down with the cause, look, in my journalism class, like, I'm telling you, like 60% were foreign born. Most of them were ESL. They could not write. They could write well for ESL, but like they weren't these outstanding visionary writers. I'm not saying I am either, but like, think that these people should have a chance in outcompeting a Anglo-born individual, unless they're like, I'm not saying it can't happen, but a lot of them is like they couldn't really speak English properly. So like, but here it's a whole scam where the foreign born are charged like 3 times the tuition. So I don't know why they come here, of all places, like Canada. I mean, why wouldn't you go somewhere like Europe if you're that rich? I think a lot of people are lied to about. I think there's a really good marketing team for Canada out there that lies to the world about us. Maybe we'll be annexed here soon anyway. So the thing is, I don't feel Canadian. I'm not a flag nationalist. Okay, I feel more like, okay, the most at home, the most comfortable, the most just right feeling I've ever felt in a country before was Norway and Sweden. Okay, Norway and Sweden. So I'm not like this big flag waving Canadian nationalist, you know. I don't think Canada is even a country. Canada is a colony of the British Empire. I don't think it ever really should have been a country. I really don't feel that Canadian. I don't really have much in common with my countrymen. I'm very introverted. I'm very, you know, keep to myself type of guy. Canadians are very extroverted types of people. Same with Americans. So I don't really fit into this type of culture. Whereas in Nordic countries, people are a lot more reserved and introverted, and I actually sometimes feel like I'm a little bit out of line. I feel more, you know, I don't agree with like the policies of the country, but the culture, I feel more in line with that. Okay, and I've recently looked at a PCA plot point of my alignment with modern genetic populations, and it says I'm a North German. Okay, so I think maybe that's just what it is. I don't know. But if you guys want to annex Canada, you don't actually want to. You want to annex Alberta and maybe create some sort of passageway with Northwest Territories to Alaska to create like a three C's initiative. But if you want any like tips, you can hire me as a defense advisor. Just kidding, by the way. But I would hearts of iron max. No, but yeah. So that was my journey. Okay, I got another little story with this type of b-boy label. Um, where was it? But one of the topics here, I missed the Tavistock. Like I got, we're gonna come back to more because you guys seem to like this. So, but one of the things I was reading is that they want the gate kids to get into the military early. Like if they'll classify, right? Are you a politician? Are you an engineer? Are you a military guy? Are you whatever, doctor, medicine? Okay. I know it was military, right? There's some really weird things happening with me in high school with the military. Like there was a co-op program in my school for the military, and like I was being really pressured to go into it. And then like this person like was in our life, and he was a military guy. He kind of just like showed up in our lives, and he like really was like, yeah, he would be so good for the military. Like you got everything we want in a young guy. Like, and it's true. Like in gym class, man. Like when I was still, in my twink youth, I could climb the rope all the way to the top, up and down, like multiple times. A lot of people couldn't even climb that rope to the top. Like I was, I was a super soldier. No, but like yeah, like I would have been good, probably. But at that time, I was already, investigating the Iraq War and the real reasons behind it. And I in Afghanistan, and Canada was in Afghanistan. It's like I don't want to die for these fucking people. So I guess the good thing about being in this sphere is sometimes you can make the right decisions in life. Sometimes you'll make the wrong ones. But sometimes it does help having a little heads up of what's going on in the world. But yeah, all this weird stuff, like this guy, he was actually a drill sergeant. Okay. He was like, brainwashing me. I was like 16 years old. Like everyone in my family was like, yeah, he's going to join. He's going to join the army. Right? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, thankfully it didn't. Some aspects, man, are so appealing to me. I love a lot of that stuff, but if it was for the right cause, if it wasn't completely infiltrated and broken, yeah, but I knew at the time it was. So. And then I probably would have been ended up in one of these psychic programs where I'd be staring at goats all day, trying to kill them with my brain, and then I'd be MK Ultra out of my mind, and then I'd be an alcoholic, and I'd get jodied. Oh man, let me know if you guys have anything similar like that. Like you were trying to be recruited, you were glowy, you had glowy experiences. You guys have written so many interesting stories in the last thing. So if you just want to expand upon that, by all means, I read every single one, top to bottom. So just I thought I was gonna be able to cover more, and I'm like I'm an hour and a half in. So next time we'll go more into the Tavistock side of things, and we'll get into the Starseed Super Soldiers. Okay, so stay tuned. Thanks a lot for sticking around this long, and I'll see you next time.